Alright, I am back with another Destiny 2 video. I was thinking about just skipping this and doing an Assassin's Creed video today, given that at reset not much happened, but I think it's worth getting into a little bit because of some really odd scheduling things that have happened with Heresy this season and where things are going from here. I guess we can briefly touch on the end of Act 2 here because it is very brief. You launch a new mission, you stand in the Court of Oryx circle, you kill, I don't know, let's say 30 enemies, and then you do this little mini game where you shoot out eyes, hovering shooty eyes, acolyte eyes, to make a certain symbol, which you are binding a dread, I think the dread that killed Eris, and somehow this is going to help us capture Oryx, but that's it. You go to Eris's throne world, you talk to Sloane. Eris thinks this is all very funny, so she's cackling that we did it. And then it's, wait around to the next act. So, not a whole lot to do today in terms of like actual content. I just realized I was looking at the battle pass and just scrolling through because everybody made fun of me because I didn't scroll through all the way to see the God roll bow, but whatever. So I was scrolling through it and I saw that, post 150, it says Act 3 launches in 6 days. And I'm like, what? Wait, really? And I looked this up and like, this is not news. I guess this has been known for a while now since, I think since the live stream, but I certainly didn't realize that Act 3 was literally launching a week from now. And this has been a really, really strange episodic launch schedule. I don't think we've ever seen anything like this. I don't know if all of the acts were the exact same length in the last two, but they were pretty close. And what's happened in Heresy is, let me check this. Okay, so Heresy launched February 4th. That was Act 1. And then Act 2 launched March 11th. So that was 5 weeks, just over, a month. And now the Act 3 here is launching a week from now on, April 2nd, something like that, April 1st. And that's 3 weeks after Act 2 launch. So, we have our 3 weeks of story content and we're done. Normally we take like 3 weeks off, but we're just going straight into Act 3 here. Obviously we know that there was not some, extra big, new type of activity or something launching. Probably will be another 3 weeks of story content, but that is, 8 weeks total to get to Act 3, and then what? we don't really know where things are going from here, and what it sure seems like is that we're going to have a pretty lengthy gap until Frontiers launches. So for reference, the Final Shape came out last June, so it is now, almost April, so that's at least like, we're at 10 months now. And then, a normal length of an act would probably get us to June to make like the full year of content. However, this is Destiny, and what used to be yearly expansions eventually moved to kind of 18 months. So if we are going to end sort of 1 year after the Final Shape, if we're doing that again, that would be another 6 months after whatever the sort of trail end of Act 3 is. I guess, you're just continuing Act 3 on indefinitely. So if it's 6 months past June, that puts us in December range, November, December, January range, somewhere in there to get Frontiers. Maybe not. It sort of depends because things are changing here. We know that Frontiers is a smaller expansion and it's not doing things like having a long list of, single-use campaign missions. They've talked about making it smaller and changing up the focus of, the campaign to be kind of different ways of approaching it, non-linear campaign, they keep calling it. We will have a new zone, presumably some sort of new planet. I 100% believe we're about to fly the Dreadnought out of here with the Echo of Navigation, helping us get somewhere. I think that is the end of the act here. The episode here. But the question is could it take less time for Bungie to make a Frontiers expansions in a way that we're not going to have to wait 18 months for a new expansion? Keep in mind, it's not just that they're making a smaller expansion, it's that they're not doing episodes or acts in between seasons, or episodes or seasons or acts or any of it. They have these quarterly updates that are not dropping like new story content per se, maybe some new mission types or something, but it mostly revolves around those kind of rotating ritual playlists where they're subbing in different past seasonal activities and like launching some new weapons each quarter and things like that. But it is not, it's less, probably significantly less than what we've seen from past seasons or episodes. And then halfway through the year, we will get the second smaller expansion, Behemoth, and the whole thing will kind of replay over again. We just don't know how big in size that these expansions are going to be. If we're talking about the gap between an episode and a full expansion, I'm going to say it's probably like halfway between those, in maybe 2/3 in favor of a normal expansion, but it is going to be less. And then additively, if they're not doing 3 episodes or 4 full seasons, it's certainly going to be less content overall, which is like no great surprise. That's just what is going to happen here. I think the main question as of now is how much dead time is there going to be between the end of Act 3, which is like, it's going to be what, the end of April probably, and then when Frontiers actually launches, because we have gotten no indications whatsoever about when Frontiers is actually supposed to get here. We have some sort of timetable. I think they said later in 2025, but that's all we have at this moment. And I think they're going to need to sort of clarify exactly how long it is to be waiting. It is not, I guess, super out of the ordinary to have a 6-month season, I guess, where it extends an extra 3 months. If this is extending just an extra 3 months from June, maybe we get it earlier, maybe we get September, maybe we get October. But it is going to be a ways away. You are going to see record low player counts and all that. And then we face the obvious question of what's going to happen when the expansion actually launches, and what does the player base make of a brand new style of expansion that is probably significantly less content than past ones. I don't think Destiny 2 will ever be able to top Final Shape player count again. I think it's essentially impossible in the current state of the game. You're never going to get more people showing up for, like expansion half or 2/3 as big as, another previous ones. So it's just not going to happen. And the question is like, what % of retention does Bungie need to, I guess, make this sustainable? If there are less resources devoted to a year of content and less players, does one balance out the other? Like if you're saving enough money on, actual content development, but you retain enough players and like maybe, you mitigate your losses, you creep into the black, something like that, that may be okay. But, this is going to be the plan for this foreseeable future, even if it is not what a lot of people may want to see. I think the singular refrain, there is nothing else anyone really talks about in terms of like revitalizing Destiny or what would get you back into Destiny. It's Destiny 3. We have no indication that is even currently in development. It may be hard for Bungie to even think that far ahead at this point, given its current problems, it being half the size it used to be and having chunks of it devoted to other games. Allegedly, Bungie is going to try to launch Marathon by the end of this year. That seems very unlikely to me. I think at best maybe we'll get some alpha and beta tests, but I would be genuinely surprised if we got a significant, like, true launch for Marathon then. So Destiny, I think things will slow down and spread out and shrink, but at least I think we've ended on a pretty good note here for the episodes. I think episodes had their ups and downs. I think certainly narratively the first 2 had their issues, but Heresy, I think, both in terms of narrative and its actual activities, have been pretty easily the best we've seen. I would expect the episodes to carry over a good amount of their, maybe at least one big activity from each episode into the new kind of ritual rotator system. They haven't confirmed any of that, but that seems exceedingly likely. We have all those new Vex battlegrounds that are essentially strikes. That'll be thrown into the playlist, stuff like that. But it is going to be a lot of reprisals, a lot of recycling, mixed with less new content than we've seen previously. So I don't think we should remotely expect Frontiers until at best early fall. Again, we don't know, it being a smaller expansion, if they can get it out faster, but it's going to be, a dead zone. That is not wholly unusual for the game. Bungie in the past has created like midway gap events, Into the Light 30th anniversary, to ensure that the player base just totally doesn't drop off a cliff entirely. I think they've been good at this. I liked the 30th anniversary content. I liked Into the Light. That was one of the best things I thought they did in a long time. And I hope they come up with something else like that between episode 3 here and Frontiers. I don't think we've gotten any hints that that's happening. Not that I can remember, but if there is a long gap, obviously something like that would be appreciated. Then again, it may be all hands on deck for the actual Frontiers content / a lot of studios working on Marathon and probably, ramping up more and more on that side. So anyway, enjoy your finished act today, which is a bit of an anticlimax, but we will be right back in it next week, apparently, with the, final stretch of the story here. And, at the very least, the end of this will give us what I'm hoping is a clear path forward into where we're going next. I don't know when Bungie is going to do like a big Frontiers stream. Usually they do it pretty early compared to the overall expansion. They want people to pre-order the expansion, so we'll see. But hopefully, we'll hear something about it once Act 3 wraps in. It's not going to wrap. I think Act 3 is going to last forever, and all the episodes will be available until Frontiers comes out. So if you want to farm whatever you want, go for it. But do remember that the weapon and armor system is essentially completely changing with Frontiers. So, don't go too crazy till we figure out what exactly is going on there. So, anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.